Get yourself a date later on today, on the dot of 8, on the great wide way. Better not be late, so go straight, don't stray, it's curtain time. All the lights are lit and the night's aglow. Pick a hot new hit, grab a hat and go. Find your seat and sit and let's start the show. It's curtain time. You bet you won't regret it at curtain time.
Hello, I'm Stuart Lane, and welcome to Curtain Time. This is the program that looks at Broadway from up close, backstage, from the wings and center stage. Our topic today, Broadway actors and the men and women who make their living on the stage. New York actors work countless hours, 8 performances, 6 days a week, making plays brilliant and turning melodies into hits. But are New York actors faring as well as they used to? What does it take to be an actor in New York? How do they cope with the expenses and pressures of New York life? Is our talent pool being depleted, or is New York still able to attract and keep actors here the way it has in the past? To answer some of these questions with me today are Jack Goldstein, Director of Government Relations for Actors Equity Association. Next to Jack is Julie Hughes, a casting director at Hughes Moss Casting Limited. Julie has cast the biggest hits on Broadway over the last 12 years, including Jelly's Last Jam, Grand Hotel, and Crazy for You. Sitting alongside Julie is Don Chastain, who is an actual actor, and whose 30-year career includes TV and film. Donna starred on Broadway in 42nd Street, No Strings, and Superman. And next to Don is actress Kelly Bishop, who besides originating the role of Sheila in A Chorus Line, starred in the recently acclaimed Pterodactyls, and whose credits include 6 Degrees of Separation and many other Broadway film and TV credits. Well, welcome all of you here today.
Thank you, Stuart.
Jack, I want to start with you so we can get kind of a foundation as to the bedrock of how to build an actor's career in New York. Now, Actors Equity Association, what is it and what does it do exactly?
Actors Equity Association is a union. It's the collective bargaining agent for actors in the United States, professional, legitimate stage actors. It was founded in 1913 with 270 actors who felt that they needed to be able to argue for better working conditions and wages. And its first strike was held in 1916 with a show called Lightning, where actors walked out carrying signs, "Lightning Strikes," and repaired to the Astor Hotel, alas, no longer there, used to be on Broadway, and began an organization which is meant to help actors to protect their interests and to deal with producers to make sure that actors are treated fairly. Its membership now consists of about 33,000 active dues-paying members. Almost 40% of those live in New York. And New York actors, New York theatrical activity, Broadway, off-Broadway, and Broadway touring companies amounts for about 25% of all of the professional theatrical activity in the United States at this point.
So this is a national organization.
It's a national organization. It has offices in Chicago, it has offices in Los Angeles, and 20 cities that are represented by something called, by some person called an area liaison.
Now, how does one get to be a member of Actors Equity Association?
One needs to be selected by a producer of an equity show, and if one is a member, one performs. If one is not, then one applies for your equity card. It costs $800 up front, and annual fees are...
And cheap at that, right?
And cheap at that. Well, worth it. Annual dues are $78, and then if you're working, it's 2% of your income for the year.
Now, I'm going back a few years, but when I remember trying to get into the union, there was always this catch-22 circle you got caught in. One was you couldn't audition for an equity show unless you were a member of Equity, but you couldn't become a member of Equity unless you were in an equity show.
They have modified that, and you can, in fact, do it. It's not easy to become a member of Equity, and it shouldn't be. It is an organization of highly trained professionals. There are very few jobs, even nationally. There are many talented people, and it is meant to be a privilege that's granted to people once they have attained a level of professionalism. So, in a sense, it should be difficult, not gratuitously, but because of the difficulties of life in the business.
No, I agree, and difficulties there are. Now, Actors Equity has always been not only protecting the actor, but also helps the actor, supports the actor. What kind of programs does Equity offer in terms of, say, health programs, dental, retirement?
Well, it has a health and pension plan for working actors. It is, as you can imagine now, has been under siege for the past several years. Equity has been devastated by AIDS. Equity is very involved in Washington in lobbying with for the President's new health proposals because we can no longer continue, many organizations can no longer continue to support their own health programs under the current circumstances. But it also supports a credit union to make loans to actors. It is important and historic supporters of the Actors Fund, which is a philanthropic organization that supports actors who are indeed in trouble and supports the Actors Home in New Jersey. And it has begun over the past 5 years to try and deal with the problems of actors who are facing career choices, and is very proud of an organization which it sponsored called the Actors Work Program, which helps provide training for second careers for actors so that if the time comes when they feel they can no longer remain in the profession, they're trained to move on to another profession.
Oh, that's nice. Nice to hear.
Yeah.
Well, now we have the basis of what an actor can work from. Now, how does an actor get the jobs? And I'd like to go to you, Julie. This is the penultimate question. As a casting director, what does a casting director do?
Well, we are hired by a producer to find the actors to come in and audition for the creative staff of a show. We read the script, we consult with the creators of it, we send out breakdowns, we go through our files, we amass actors, and we bring them in to audition for the powers that be.
The powers be. That's the producers, the director,
choreographers,
playwright,
writers, yes.
all the C.
All the decision makers.
How do you become a casting director? Have you trained for this, or?
There is no formal training for it. Many of us have come through just long years of being in the theater. I'm a product of the theater. My father was a stage manager. My mother was an actress. I didn't know any better. And so I...
Have any of us? No, I joke. It's a wonderful industry, and
it's a fairly new phenomena. I mean, it's about 15 years old that the casting directors become...
What did they use before that?
There were in-house people. In the old days, there were producers that had offices, and they had staffs in the offices, and those people would cast the shows. Often stage managers would. My father was a production stage manager, and he cast Death of a Salesman because he was the stage manager of it, and that's what he did. That's part of his job.
Do you think this has complicated things or made things simpler?
I think it's made things simpler to some degree. Now there are national tours out, and often you can have 2 and 3 companies of a show out, and you really need somebody that's on top of the whole thing.
Do you think a program might be set up that would educate people in casting and what to look for, or is it something that's so esoteric you can't really grab it? I
think it's instinctual. I really do. I mean, we have a society called the Casting Society of America. There are criteria to be members of the Casting Society. We are in the process of trying to unionize, which will then also make it more difficult for people to get in. One of the problems is that anybody can be a casting director now, and we would like to set some criteria for background.
That sounds good. That sounds like progress.
We're trying.
Now, are actors, for all those actors who are watching today, are actors allowed to submit to you directly, or do they go through agents? How do you prefer?
Anyway. Many of us have... we certainly do have an open-door policy at our office where any actor can come by and drop off their picture and resume. And I have a very knowledgeable receptionist who knows what shows we're doing of a time and will come and get me if there's somebody that comes to the door that we need that moment. But I encourage actors to come by and drop off their picture. You never know.
You never know.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Julie. We're going to be right back. We have to pause now, but please stay with us. And after these messages, we'll talk more about being a Broadway actor.
Oh, hey, what's going on? Shh, Smokey's coming.
What are you guys up to?
Oh.
Be careful with matches and campfires. Remember, only you can prevent forest fires.
Sorry, force of habit.
Bummer.
Willis Reed led his team to an NBA championship. Now he's vice president of the New Jersey Nets, using skills he learned in the classroom.
I know what it's like to beat the odds and win the big game. My friends here have faced tougher problems, but they found help. They're staying in school, going for the big win, education. If you dropped out, if you're thinking about dropping out, call 718-935-3650. Stay in the game.
Hi, welcome back to Curtain Time. I'm Stuart Lane, and today we're talking about being an actor in New York. Well, Kelly, let's start over here now. You're an actress in New York. Why did you choose acting as a profession to begin with? Let's start with basics.
Well, I was trained as a dancer, so I really started as a dancer. I was trained in ballet, but I really wanted to do Broadway shows and ended up doing so. And then in my late 20s, I started thinking about the problems that dancers have with this very short life. I mean, 35 is usually about the limit. And I always wanted to act and managed to get little roles in the musicals I was in, little 5-line roles out of whatever. And so since I wanted to act anyway, I kind of bit the bullet and stopped taking chorus jobs and was very fortunate, and within a few months had landed my first principal role, and it took off from there. I do it because I love it.
Well, yes, so there are easy ways to make a living at it.
Yes, there are.
And what was your first big break then into the business?
I would say my really first big break as an actress would have been Chorus Line, because although I had gotten a few principal jobs in musicals, Michael Bennett then put together this workshop that was going to become a chorus line, and I thought, what a wonderful way to sort of show the world what my life had been, the chorus dancer's life. A great opportunity to act, lots of time, lots of protection, so I went for it, and my God, it was incredible. I mean, the show was the biggest hit around, and I got a lot of attention, and what that did is open the door for me as an actress to go out to the coast and start saying, well, I'm an actress.
Was Chorus Line your first acting job after coming from the dance world?
Well, I had done West Side Story Company. I'd done a touring company of Irene, and I'd done a couple of industrials playing principal roles. But so it wasn't the first job, but it was the real acting job of those things, because the other ones were sort of more old-fashioned musicals. So it's an acting job.
So we have here a real New York actress.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, now, being labeled a New York actress, do you find that to be a positive thing or a negative thing?
I consider it a positive thing.
There you go.
You betcha. Well, you have that problem with the coast. There's more work on the coast being L.A. So a lot of people go out there. I find that being labeled a New York actor tends to say you're a good actor. There are many people who are very successful on the coast in television shows and such, and I would love to do one. It's not that I'm looking down on them. But people who have been cast and gone into these roles on television for maybe 3, 4, 5 years, who really aren't actors, have never been on a stage before, and can do that one character but can't do other characters. I find New York actors, because of the struggle of this city, of what we have to do to survive as actors, I think that it demands a great deal more, and I somehow think there's a little cachet attached to being a New York actor.
What do you think is the most challenging part of being an actress in New York?
Straight out survival, particularly as you get older. You just have to, the odd thing I find is it's like as soon as the job is over, I've been in the business for 31 years now. Thank goodness, and I've been very fortunate, and I've never had to do another job. I've always made my money performing. But it's like as soon as the job is over, you just got off the bus with your suitcase, and you walk and you knock on somebody's door and say, hi, I want to be an actor. And you go, doesn't there ever come a point, without being a major star, that you can, everyone knows, you don't have to show your resume to people, you don't have to give them your latest picture. No, it doesn't. There's just too much competition out there, too few jobs. You just have to swallow your pride. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to go crawling, but you have to just know that that's part of the business, and you go right back in and you audition and you do what you have to do to get the job.
So the challenging thing, let's say, is to get the next job.
Absolutely.
It
doesn't stop.
Don, what do you think? What's the most challenging thing for you, say, in being an actor in New York?
Surviving. I agree with her totally. It's very difficult. Julie and Kelly and I were talking about this in the car on the way, that there is such a difference, a disparity between the amount of work in New York City and on the West Coast. The quality of the work in New York City tends to be more demanding, as Kelly was indicating, and as Julie knows, and as I certainly know, because there's such a the market's so limited and there are so many different things within it that you must be able to do in order to survive or have a, quote, day job, you know? And so given that fact, it's not surprising that quite often LA comes to New York to get people to go back and do what LA needs, because a lot of people, as Kelly said again, in Los Angeles are very good at what they do within a very limited parameter. But given the demands of complex roles and that kind of thing, they tend to come to New York and ask for people with that kind of background and training.
Now, you bring up the West Coast. You made a living out there for many years and continue to. Is there a difference, really, between living and working out in Los Angeles than New York?
An enormous difference. And I must say, parenthetically, that during that period of time that I was living in Los Angeles, making a living in Los Angeles, I was periodically coming back to New York and touring with shows, because theater was the thing in which I was most anchored, that I felt the most secure and had the most pleasure from. Yeah, I co-starred in a television series at one point. I've done a lot of television, a lot of guest shots, done films, and so on. All of it demanding in a certain kind of way, all of it calling on whatever I might have in the toolbox. But life in Los Angeles, that period of time between jobs, is quite different than it is in New York. In Los Angeles, you're really, unless you're part of a very small circle, and those circles, there are several of those circles, but unless you're a member of that circle and on a certain level of, quote, stardom or celebrity-ness or whatever, you tend to be isolated. Because the town is very spread out.
When I lived in LA for a year myself as an actor, and it's so spread out and anchored in theater like you, and there's no place for people to congregate like there is in New York.
No, it's very strange.
It's not the major reason why they're out there, television and film being more important at that point.
And what's interesting is that when New York actors run into each other in California, it's like, my God, you know, because we were all, again, talking earlier, there's such a sense of community in New York City, in the theater industry or business or life, whatever you want to talk about. But actors support each other. I mean, Kelly and I are neighbors, but we also work together as actors. We like each other as people, but we wish each other well. We run into each other on the street.
Don, hold that thought for a second. We got a break for a minute. Listen, I tell you, stay with us, but let me remind our viewers to go out and get a pencil now, to take down the address and send it to us with their comments. We'll tell you where and where to write at the end of the show, but first, these messages.
Excuse me, do you wear your safety belt?
Why, no. I don't wear my safety belt.
Thank you.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
When they brought the baby home, she was beautiful and perfect. They surrounded her with care and love. Nothing would harm her. But there was a terrible threat they couldn't see. Poisonous lead that hides in dust, in paint, in water. A child can eat it, drink it, even breathe it. 1 out of 6 preschoolers has high levels of lead in their blood. Call 1-800-LEAD, FYI, for a few simple steps that can help protect your child. Her parents acted in time. You can too.
Hi, I'm Stuart Lane, and welcome back to Curtain Time. We're talking today about being an actor in New York, and we've got Don Chastain and Kelly Bishop with us here today. And I want to just ask one more question of Don, if I can. Sure. You started in the theater here in New York in the 60s. What would you say is the greatest change for an actor in New York since then?
Sheer quantity of work. By that I mean, in the 60s there was a... I did a Gershwin recording, and at the time that the show was written originally, there were 205 or 10 shows opening, trying out in that year, 1 year. In the 60s, there was a greatly reduced number. There are a greatly reduced number from the 60s to now. So the major change is that. The other major change is that, to me at least, the width of opportunity in New York has increased in that, I don't know how to say it, within the very narrow confines of the business as it stands now, there's still an enormous number of opportunities for actors with a range, from comedy to drama to musical to commercial to stage to television to whatever, to color radar, whatever it is going on. So all of that's a change to me, but it's an evolution. It's all evolution.
John, let me ask you, Jack, a question. Has the membership increased, equity membership increased in the last 10 years, or no?
It's remained fairly steady. What is cyclical is the amount of work that's done in New York as opposed to in the regions and on touring companies. And there was, during the 80s, you had a very bleak period, and then there was this kind of repair process that has been going on. This past, I think, last season, 91, 92, probably will prove to be one of the really strong seasons. 92, 93 is not proving at this point to be one of the really strong seasons. It's why it's so important to have other elements of the entertainment industry, such as film and television and advertising, active in New York, because theater is by nature cyclical. If you go back over when Broadway was founded, when it's celebrating its 100 years, one out of every 5 shows has failed throughout that 100-year period. It is just endemic in the business.
Those are the stats today.
It's 1 out of 5 shows. It takes 5 shows to make a hit.
Maybe you can hedge that bet if you bring in like an import, like an English play.
It really doesn't matter. It all evens out. It's 1 out of 5. It's a tremendous investment that needs to be present, a tremendous creative energy, a lot of independent producers.
So in other words, I'm about due for another hit?
You're about due for another hit.
Oh boy, okay.
But that's why it's very important. If television and film fails in New York, theater fails in New York.
Julie, do you find the cycle is now picking up, or is it on its way down?
Well, I think theater this year is in a bit of trouble, and I agree with Jack. I think we've got to have more theater, television and film here, because what's happening is we have actors like Kelly and Don who don't want to go to California but might have to go to California because there's not enough work for them.
Can't have that, no sir.
And during the dreaded pilot season from January to March, there is not an actor in New York. You know, everybody goes out there, God bless them, and nobody gets a job, but they try.
Stick around, kid.
You know, Kelly, Don, this next question's on the table for you guys, because you're our experts here. You live with this. Well, what is the most common problem shared by actors in New York today?
Problem.
Well, for instance, housing, besides the lack of work.
Yeah, well, there's certainly the lack of work. I think that we're all probably pretty settled into where we live. Of course, New York is a very expensive city to live in. I think it's a basic survival. As Don was saying, there is only so much work. There are only so many actors. And as Julie was saying, we do have that problem. Do we go to L.A. for the pilot season? Do we stay in New York? That's very expensive to go out there. You know, even with a good plane fare, and you have maybe even a friend you can stay with, you've got to rent the car. You've got to do all of this stuff. You've got to spend a lot of days not doing anything. You might have a few auditions, or maybe 8 a week, but you still going to have a lot of time with nothing to do.
Separated from your family.
Being separated. See, that's something that it's very odd.
Yeah, it's
but
hard.
That's sort of a last consideration I find with productions, is the personal life of the actor. It's just not taken into consideration. Maybe it shouldn't be, but
well, no, I think it should be. I mean,
I think it does. I mean, I don't have children, and I still have a problem. My husband, my home, really, which includes my animals and the other things that make me happy, the place that I go where I'm safe. It's okay to go out and work and miss those things, but to go out into L.A. and sit and miss those things, it becomes very, very difficult.
Don, what do you think?
It's very hard to go without, as Kelly says, without, in other words, if you go to a job, that's one thing. You go for a finite period of time, you know exactly how long, how much, where, etc. To go out there on this kind of amorphous cloud of maybes and gee if you're not, and is, along with the fact that a friend of mine said have you ever thought about the dollar and cents aspect of it? And if you're talking about 1 to 4 months in Los Angeles, you're talking about 20 grand. You know, and that's, there aren't any of us that I know of that easily can throw that on the table and say, okay, that's gone, not to mention the fact that you are then separated from your people, from your family, from your connections, from your support, from your, you know, you're out there swinging by your thumbs in this very strange place, folks. I'm sorry.
So it's one thing to have a
All
job
I've
there to
lived
work
there.
at.
It's weird.
But it's another thing to be waiting and have nothing to do.
Absolutely.
Which is where the support system comes into play. And
Because you're talking about your life, Stuart. You're talking about a life.
No.
Living a life in this business.
Do you think the support system in New York is good for the actor?
Yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
You touched on it a little bit
You know,
earlier.
I thought of something one day when I had just come back from living in LA for a couple of years, and I thought, in Los Angeles, if, say you've done a television show and it fails, or whatever, everyone avoids you. You're off the good list. Your parking place is gone. Everything's wrong. In New York, you find out about an actor who's having problems, who's unemployed. You invite them over for dinner.
Yeah.
That's the difference right there. We take care of our own. The other people in LA, there's some peculiar thing. It's as if they believe in magic, and they think that this negative thing's going to wear off on them if they get near you. And in New York, we embrace one another. We, Julie was just mentioning while you were taking the break, we do suggest roles to one another, or to casting people, or to directors. If you're talking to someone, they say, I'm trying to cast this part, you'll suddenly come up with actors that you can think of. I mean, you know the part's not right for you. And you say, I know somebody who'd be wonderful in this role, and we do that with each other.
One last quick question. One sentence to repeat. What is the most challenging role you've ever cast, and what are the favorite roles you've had? Julie?
The most challenging role I've ever cast is the next role I'm going to cast. That's all I can say.
That's tricky, but that's okay.
Take it.
Well, in the same line, the next challenging role I play will be the most challenging because it's new.
Okay. You started a trend here, Julie.
Well, but it's the truth.
I'll break it.
Go for it, baby.
The most challenging role initially was We's in 6 Degrees, because the role I wanted, I was not cast in it. And I put myself in a position by taking a smaller role in that play and being very tenacious and very professional, and worked my way into getting that role, and it was hard. The other one is the one I just finished doing, which was
Pterodactyls.
Pterodactyls.
Yes. You did a great job with that.
It's a tough role. I mean, a huge change. So I've been lucky in that. You know.
Kelly, well, thank you. And listen, we're out of time, I'm sorry to say, but this has been a lot of fun. And I want to thank Jack Goldstein and Julie Hughes, Don Chastain, and Kelly Bishop for joining us here today. And thanks to our viewers for watching. Maybe we have passed the actor's bug on to just a few of you. Now, if you want to write to us or our guests, you can do so at Curtain Time, care of Crosswalks Television, University Avenue and West 181st Street, Tech 2 Building, Suite 222, Bronx, New York, 10453. Again, if you haven't got it, Curtain Time, care of Crosswalks Television, University Avenue and West 181st Street, Tech 2 Building, Suite 222, Bronx, New York, 10453. Thanks for watching. I'm Stuart Lane, and this has been Curtain Time.
Get yourself a date later on today on the dot of 8 on the Great Wide Way. Better not be late, so go straight, don't stray. It's curtain time. All the lights are lit and the night's aglow. Pick a hot new hit, grab a hat and go. Find your seat and sit and let's start the show. It's curtain time. You bet you won't regret it at curtain time.
Hello, I'm Stuart Lane, your host for Curtain Time. Our show looks at Broadway up close, from backstage, in the wings, front row, center stage. And for the next 30 minutes, you'll see Broadway in a whole new light. On this show, we'll talk to independent Broadway producers. These are the men and women who put shows together before ever going near a theater. They receive a script and visualize it on stage, cast it in their heads, and then comes the hardest part. They have to capitalize it. And their work doesn't stop there. Once the pieces come together, Broadway producers have to keep the pieces from coming undone every day that that curtain goes up. Now, what motivates the people who run Broadway? What obstacles do they face? What future do they see for Broadway? With me today are three prominent independent producers. First, Roger Hess, producer of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Jelly's Last Jam, and Leader of the Pack, to name a few. Next to Roger is Max Weitzenhofer, producer of Equus, The Will Rogers Follies, and The Elephant Man, as well as many other hit shows. Now, next to Max is Darrell Roth, producer of Nick and Nora, and the off-Broadway shows Closer Than Ever, The Baby Dance, Schmolnick's Waltz. She produced 2 revues in 1983, Tapestry, the music of Carole King, and Back to Bacharach and David. Welcome to my guests. Thank you all for coming today. Darrell, I want to start with you. I guess one of the most burning questions I've heard people ask, the first one is, what does a producer do?
Well, I think primarily a producer acts as the catalyst to put a project together, to find the material, either through script, workshops, seeing productions in a regional theater, find something that you really love, be passionate about it, and then go about putting the elements together. You could start with casting, if it hasn't already been cast. You could start with square one, putting together, you know, people that will be your creative team. And the hard part, raising money.
Money, yeah.
Right, as you mentioned, the capitalization. For me, the most exciting part of it is putting it all together, getting the creative people sort of in tune with one another and beginning the journey together, everyone hopefully feeling the same passion and devotion to the project.
And the same goal.
And the same goal and the same vision, which often is a problem. If people don't share the vision in a unified way, things can get off track.
Now, how did you become a producer, and what was your first show?
The first show I did was Closer Than Ever, a wonderful musical review that people still enjoy, thanks to the RCA recording, that Richard Maltby and David Shire wrote. Wonderful
nice plug,
songs.
Darrell.
What?
Nice plug.
The beauty of it for me, as my first project, was that the songs all dealt with going through changes in your life, and doors opening, which was actually our scenic theme. And it was really what was going on in my own life. You know, I came to producing, though loving it my entire life, loving theater my entire life, came to this rather late for most people. Roger and Max have been doing it much longer, because I felt that I had to do it. Just had to do it. Closer Than Ever was, for me, a wonderful beginning. A wonderful beginning. And for that, I thank everybody involved in it, specifically Richard and David, whose music is great.
That?
Richard Maltby and I were working together at City Center on a musical theater program. And let's see, he was helping me as my mentor, I would actually say. We were going around looking at some things. I was testing the waters to see if I could really, you know, do this. And one night we went down to a club, a cabaret called 88's, and some of Richard and David's music was being performed, and that was the seed of Closer Than Ever. And from there we took it to Williamstown, where we had a wonderful summer workshop, and from there it moved to the Cherry Lane.
Yes, well, I know Richard, very talented, very nice fellow.
Yeah,
just
he's
had a
wonderful.
baby recently, you know.
Yeah, their family is growing, as did David and Dee Dee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
now,
good people.
I know you were producing Nick and Nora, and it was one of those productions that didn't quite fulfill that dream. But I often do postmortems on the shows I do. What did you learn from Nick and Nora?
Nick and Nora was, at the end of the day, a wonderful experience for me. I know that's hard to say. It was a difficult journey. I was a co-producer. I was really involved with people that had been much more experienced. It was the first time I had done anything on Broadway. What I guess I learned primarily is that it's the vision concept we spoke of. I don't think the creative team really did share the same vision.
That's right.
And though the people involved were truly wonderful, each in their own right. I mean, the cast, the creative people, I mean, they were wonderful geniuses in their own fields. Something happened, it didn't work, the public didn't like it, the preview period was overextended, people were kind of angry. Nothing got more press. I mean, it certainly was out there for everybody to know about. For me, it was a disappointment for sure. I mean, I always feel responsible for the money that I raise, you know, not having found its way. That's difficult. That's very difficult.
Well, then you've done a lot of off-Broadway now.
I'm very comfortable off-Broadway. I feel more hands-on, more in charge.
Can you make money off-Broadway with these shows?
Oh, yes, you can. In fact, you can. The beauty of an off-Broadway show is that usually it's smaller, easy to travel. So there are always companies that are being put up around the country. I mean, with Closer Than Ever, it goes on all over. It makes me happy to know that. Schmolnick's Waltz, which was a beautiful little story by Alan Nee, a playwright who presented this wonderful little romance, and it's been very easy to do out of town. It's a single set with some, you know, props that come and go. Off-Broadway gives you that opportunity. For me, Theda Bara and the Frontier Rabbi is a new off-Broadway musical comedy that I'm working on, and hopefully it will open at the end of February. And it will be a wonderful musical off-Broadway and will have the opportunity to make money because we're planning to do it in a rather large off-Broadway house. So, yeah, that option is there. I mean, you know, it's not my initial motivation. I have to be very fair. It's love of theater primarily.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Now, Max, you're a Sooner. I know, Max, you're from Oklahoma.
Right.
And I learned what a Sooner was because Max and I did the Will Rogers Follies together, and that's how I got educated. Exactly. Now, let's start with the first question is, do you want to elaborate on what Darryl had said about what a producer does?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things one has to realize about all of us that are independents is that, you know, Darryl or Roger can do a show that they're tremendously in love with, that they have their own vision for, and can turn out, as they both had big successes, but we may not like each other's vision or what each other's doing from time to time, and then we form partnerships with each other sometimes, and sometimes we don't. But my own experience, I guess the best experience that I could say is that I started out, I mean, had done a couple of shows way back, and then my third show out, which was Dracula, was probably, you know, I mean, you come out of the box and you have a gigantic hit in it. I mean, compared to what things were today, for $1 invested, it was a gigantic hit. And not only that, it won Tony Award, and you get this kind of, you know, after the third time around, you think, oh my God, this is really easy. I know everything. And
sounds like
you know,
Danger.
and that's, you know, it's. Then I had a very nice partner named Frank Milton, and we had gone to Paris to see. We were assigned to Dracula in Paris, and we gone to Paris to look at theaters. Decided that the French were all dishonest, and decided against that project, but we saw a play called Harold and Maude at the d'Orsay with Madeleine Renaud, the great French actress, and directed by her husband Jean-Louis Barrault. And it was a very simple play based. It had actually preceded the movie, and it had been running 6 years in Paris, and it was wonderful. And anyway, to make a long story short, Frank and I optioned the play. It turned out to be the biggest straight play flop in the history of Broadway until that time. I mean, it was capitalized at the enormous thing of $500,000. We lost $800,000. We were like Bialystok in Bloom opening night because we'd run out of money. We were into our own money, and if we had mixed notices, we had all these investors. We thought, oh my God. But what I'm getting at is that what the problem with the show is that the producers, the two of us, ruined the project. And this is what I'm saying, what the learning process you have.
Okay, Max, I'm going to hold that thought because we have to break now. We'll be right back. But we have some messages for you, so please, out there, stand by. We'll be back with Curtain Time. Thanks.
friends. Depend on me, Smokey B, to voice a plea. Respect the forest, protect our trees. Oh, what am I doing?
Smoke, baby, what's the trouble?
Around, this isn't me.
Smoke, you're 50. We agreed you'd talk to kids in their language.
I know, but I'll just give it to them straight. Kids, only you can prevent forest fires.
Smokey, look, Smoke!
I gotta get back to the forest.
Vince, that new dummy cam is great.
Yeah, it'll sure give people a whole new outlook on what it's like when you don't wear a safety belt.
I think they'll get the picture.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
Hi, welcome back. This is Curtain Time, and I'm Stuart Lane. And today we're talking about producing for the Broadway stage. Max, we were with you here. Let's pick up. How did you become a producer?
I suppose through bad fortune. I'm not quite sure. No. When I got out of when I got out of college, I mean, I was a theater major in college, which is probably meaningless, but I ran the La Jolla. I was out in California, and I worked at the La Jolla Playhouse for a number of years. I was an apprentice, then I ran the apprentice program, then I was general manager, then I promptly, my first year as producing out there, put the place into bankruptcy. And then it ceased to exist until it is what it is today. And then, you know, I came to New York and learned, and I had a great mentor when I came to New York. And I was very fortunate in becoming involved with Morton Gottlieb.
Morty, oh.
And sure. I think Morty probably has forgotten more about the theater than the rest of us. No, he was a great producer. I mean, you know, I was involved with him in Sleuth and a number of other shows. And I learned the business from him and his general manager, Ben Rosenberg. And
I remember Ben, too.
And that was really how I got started.
Well, let me ask you now then, since we've got a long history here in the theater and producing for Broadway, how would you say producing today differs from, say, when you produced Equus?
Well, I was really, in those days, I was really, I mean, I must say that Kermit Bloomgarden was I learned a lot from Kermit, was the one that really put Equus together. And Kermit used to say to me that the basic, and Kermit had done Death of a Salesman. I mean, Kermit was one of the great Broadway producers, and he always said to me that the difference between what Broadway has become and what it was when he was doing Death of a Salesman is that producing used to be a relationship between the producer and the writer, and that what's happened in the current state of Broadway is that a producer is really on the side, and the writer and the director are maneuvering the show. And the producer had a much more hands-on situation, you know, a number of years ago.
Well, that's something we'll get back to later on in the show. Roger, let me ask you now. I've seen very diversified, but again, let me ask you, is there anything you'd like to add to what a producer does?
I think Darryl summed it up. I find that the process is the reward. Putting one of these projects together is such a thrilling process, operation, enterprise, and the end result, albeit hopefully we all hope it to be successful, really the memories you take away, I'm sure, are more about sitting in that darkened theater and agonizing over that little teeny thing that didn't work right and having to change the lights and the costumes and the sound. I mean, all of that to me is what's exciting about this world. So
is that what made you become a producer, or?
You know, I don't know what made me become a producer.
Just lucky, I guess.
Yeah, I think I was a groupie. As I think back, I think I can remember hanging out at radio stations and then going to television stations. It's all I've ever wanted to do. I mean, be in the entertainment business. I didn't know that it was ultimately going to wind up being producing, but I've always loved the industry.
So you've been producing all your time. You didn't like segue to it through acting?
No, I did. I started producing in the 70s. Prior to that, I used to, I started out in the mailroom at a talent agency and became an agent and was an agent for about 8 or 9 years. Right. And then ultimately, somebody just said, being an agent is a great education, but you don't go to school all your life, and I left and did produce my first show
I think
in the
especially in
70s.
this business, experience is like one of the major props. Now, I see that, I know that you've produced internationally. You've done A Chorus Line in Spain, Evita in South America. How did these shows fare down there, and how did you get involved in international producing
Well,
like that?
that came out of another. I had, when I was at a division of Warner Brothers, I actually created all of the Warner Brother costumed character appearances. Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Sylvester, Tweety, Elmer Fudd. And one day I put those all together and created an arena show, which ultimately became 5 arena shows. And those shows traveled all over the world in foreign languages for about 8 years. And during the 6th or 7th year, the people who owned the rights to Evita, having gotten many calls from promoters in South America wanting to do Evita, and the Stigwood organization not knowing any of those, but they knew that I had experience in South America, called me one day and said, would I be interested in doing Evita in South America? Well, what an adventure to take a show starring
about Evita
down to South America, and it got more and more exciting the closer and closer we got to Argentina, the more exciting it got.
How did the show do down there? Very well?
It was a big hit, and also because it's such a unique project to take to that part of the world. It's a very difficult part of the world in which to do business and to cross borders, but because of this subject matter, a lot of doors were opened that otherwise would have been more difficult to open.
How did Chorus Line do in Spain?
Not as well as it's done in some of the other countries. We may have made a mistake in casting it with Americans. I opted to buy first the talent and not be as concerned with accents. And I think ultimately having an American cast speaking Spanish with American accents it probably would have been better had we cast it in Spain and had people who were not as talented at dancing, but whose speech could have been more readily understood.
That's interesting. We did La Cage aux Folles in Japan, and it was a Japanese cast, all Japanese cast. It was me sitting in the audience didn't understand anything, but that did well. I think you're right. That's an interesting observation.
And also, there are parts of South America that don't know about auditions. Audition is something that doesn't exist. A chorus line in Venezuela, they would not have understood what the show was about because they don't audition.
Oh, my. Well, I want to get back to you. We have to cut for a message here, but Roger, I want to get back to you and talk about Jelly's Last Jam, and that might just launch us into a whole new topic here. We're going to have to take a pause for a moment, but viewers, why don't you grab a pencil during the break, because we will show our address at the end of the show for you, so you can write to us. And we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey, Mike, big fan. So, John, what are you doing after graduation? Hey, I got a job. I'm going to make some serious bucks. As what, a garbage collector?
Hey, John's got a good head for garbage.
Hey, we've been friends for a long time. Yeah, we've been through a lot together.
So now, I mean, we're all going in different directions. We'll probably never see each other again.
Well, we can still keep in touch.
Yeah, you say that now, but people change.
We won't. Look, we're always going to be friends, and there's nothing that's going to change that.
Did you ever think that maybe it's what we see that makes us blind? Let's put the bag on racism.
Hi, welcome back to Curtain Time. I'm Stuart Lane, and today we're talking about producing for the Broadway stage. I was talking to Roger here. Now, Roger, you produced Jelly's Last Jam, and I understand that there was a investment and participation of Polygram concerning a pay-per-view version of the show. Can you elaborate on that for me?
But before I answer, I ought to correct something that I'm sure Darryl and Max will agree. I co-produced it. There are very, very few shows that anybody nowadays, they're so complicated and they take so long.
Where's David
There's so
Merrick?
many elements that all of us have partners and all of us, I think, like to be referred to as co-producers because my other partner is sitting at home watching this program. If they hear me referred to as producer,
he can send me a letter. That's all right.
Right, they can send you letters. In any event, the Polygram pay-per-view situation on Jelly's Last Jam was kind of unique in that this is such an embryonic field that, unlike other subsidiary rights, meaning movies, television, books, the cast had the right to approve a pay-per-view deal. That's not the same thing. If someone had made us an offer to sell the movie rights, we would not have had to go to the cast. But in this particular area, you must get cast approval. In any event, I think what happened, and you're asking, I guess, why we never did do the pay-per-view. What happened was the offer came to us to do the pay-per-view about a week before the Tonys. Our show had received a lot of nominations for Tony Awards,
Good
and
show,
it was
too.
very much, thank you, it was very much on the minds of the cast, the Tony Award program, and the rehearsals for the Tony Award, and that's when they wanted to tape the pay-per-view. So that, plus the cast's fear that this show, reduced to 19 inches on a screen, would not be as successful on screen as it was in the theater.
Now this brings up a very important question. You know, producers as we are, we want to find more ways of exploiting the product once you have a product, and once you get past road companies, international companies, and perhaps a movie sale if you're lucky. Television has always remained very elusive. Roger, I'll let you kick this one off. Do you believe that pay-per-view is good and can exist?
It all depends how it's done. Reducing the live experience to a screen is a very, very difficult jump. And I don't know, there are certain shows, I guess, when it would be right, but it's a very, very difficult medium on which to show something which is basically a live experience. There's nothing like being in a live theater. The magic of the theater is very difficult to reproduce on a screen, be it motion pictures or television.
So you think pay-per-view is possible but challenging?
Correct. Well said.
I would agree with that on one level, actually. But on another level, some part of me says how wonderful it would be for people that will never get to the theater and have the live experience, be able to see a wonderful show like Jelly's or any other show that might be under consideration. So I have two views on it. One is that I would love to have more people get to see wonderful theater, and if it means on pay-per-view or in some other form, I'm all for it. But I understand what Roger's saying, and I agree with that.
Max?
Yes, I'm not a big, personally, of the shows that I've seen on pay-per-view that have been taped. I'm not a particularly big fan of it because I think, you know, the theater is a unique experience. It's a live experience, and that's what makes it very special. And from the financial side of producing, I would say that we all and our partners basically have enough to do to take care of, if we have a hit show, the road, and now especially the worldwide rights for these shows are so good that, you know, you don't want to also diminish your audience by
broadcasting.
By broadcasting. You know, I mean, look at the Phantom companies that are out now. If that show was on pay-per-view, I mean, you've got companies all over the country that are doing, each one doing almost $1 million a week.
The concept of pay-per-view, meaning that the show is still running when the show is shown on a cable network, let's say, as compared to just actually doing it for the screen, like what you started to touch on in terms of concept. Will a stage version work on screen? When Bette Midler recently did Gypsy on television. Now, although the critics might have been less than ecstatic about it, it took a whopping 28% share of the television audience that night.
I thought it was fabulous.
So did I.
I thought it was fabulous.
I thought it was wonderful myself.
That wasn't a Broadway show taped for television. That was shot like a feature.
Taped in the studio, yes.
That was a movie.
Exactly, that was a movie.
But for television.
Well, do you feel that, so then, if there was a live broadcast after the show was done, for instance, we've taped shows like Sweeney Todd, we've done Lena Horne, Sophisticated Ladies. So after the show's been done, is there an afterlife for it on television?
As a theater piece? I wouldn't think so. I know what Darryl is saying. It is important. There are a lot of people who will never see live theater, maybe. But I wonder whether I'd like them to see it on television at all costs, because I think it'll suffer, and I wonder how excited they'll be to go out and see a live theater if they see a theatrical show shot in a theater.
Okay, I want to try one more topic because we're going to be running out of time, and I know I'm jumping in with something that's important. But it was recently pointed out that as of January 3rd this year, there'll only be 3 plays running on Broadway. Laughter on the 23rd Floor, Perestroika and Angels, piggybacking that one, and Sisters Rosenzweig. And in Variety, they've actually said that there's a hostility towards the play on Broadway. Do you find that true? Max, let me lead off with you.
No, I don't find that true. I think we all have to admit, well, we should, you know, it's my own opinion, I should say, and that, you know, the staple of Broadway many years ago, the comedies and things that used to run a lot, are really now on television. I mean, the 40 Carats and all the things that used to be popular. Sure. But we have to recognize the fact that, you know, as producers, we also have to look for plays when we're looking for things that have an interest that the general public wants to see. I think if we produce plays that the public really wants to see, they'll go. I mean, I think we're producing things that we may like, but it's not their fault.
Okay, Daryl?
I would hope it's not true that the play is dead. I'm in love with plays, and I think that we have to nurture young playwrights, and I think perhaps a safer way to start something, which Sisters Rosenzweig is a wonderful example of, is by starting a play under the umbrella of Lincoln Center Theater, Playwrights Horizon, Manhattan Theater Club, giving the opportunity for the play to grow. And then perhaps there's a little bit of an insurance policy when it does come to Broadway. I think it's very hard to just go, boom, here we are.
Unfortunately, I agree with you in the sense that today to bring a play into Broadway without any kind of star power, unless you're Neil Simon, is difficult to do unless you have a production done with a nonprofit theater company. Yeah. Roger?
I agree with what Max and Daryl said. It is tough. I can't think of a great play that has opened on Broadway, however, and closed.
Yeah.
So it may also have something to do with up-to-date what we've now...
There would be producers that would argue that point.
Anyone present?
Well...
Well, no, not personally speaking, but there have been some very good plays that just haven't found their audience.
Yeah.
That just haven't found their audience. Either they were too deep, too heavy, too historic, subject matter was unappealing or depressing. A number of reasons.
Well,
doesn't make it a bad play.
Daryl and Max and Roger, I tell you, a half hour is not enough time to get all this topics down. I've got pages I haven't even touched upon yet.
We'll come back,
but,
it's okay.
Okay, well, thank you.
You can do another half hour.
I apologize to our audience, too. We're running out of time, so I want to express my thanks to my friends here for taking time out of their busy schedules to come here. It's Roger Hess, Max Weisenhofer, and Daryl Roth. And as you can see out there, it is hard work producing a show. Now, here's our address here at Crosswalk, so you can write to us if you have any questions for me or my guests. Write to us at Curtain Time, care of Crosswalks Television, University Avenue and West 181st Street, Tech 2 Building, Suite 222, Bronx, New York, 10453. Say, put that again. Curtain Time, care of Crosswalks Television, University Avenue and West 181st Street, Tech 2 Building, Suite 222, Bronx, New York, 10453. For Curtain Time, thanks for watching. I'm Stuart Lane. See you next time.